There you go, Mark. I'm taking one for the team. We call this hog heaven. And I mean hog heaven. Wake up, Mark. It's time to go fishing. Hey, you ready to go hunting? Well, we've walked about a half mile from camp, which is about 20 minutes through pretty dense forest that sidelines this river. And we made it to a barren plateau with sparse spruce trees scattered about, but we've got to go through that dense fog and hopefully find some caribou out in an opening. But right now we don't have but about a 200-yard visibility around us. Hopefully that'll improve as we move farther out toward the tundra. Mark just spotted some bulls that seemed to have some pretty good size to them. They're bedded down right behind this knoll here, right in the fog. We're probably 200 yards from them right now, but we've got a cow over here to our left, and she's going to be the problem. If we blow this stalk, it's going to be because of her, because the wind is perfectly in our favor. So we have to be careful. We have to be real cautious at this point. Slow and easy. The dense fog lent us the advantage of stealth, so we moved farther, away from the river and closer to my opportunity. Before long, I spotted my target, and it would take me 3 separate approaches before I could make a clean shot. The main concern wasn't whether I could hit my mark, but rather avoiding a pass-through shot, injuring another caribou.
He's moving this way. About 150, 200 yards.
I resisted the urge to abandon the stalk altogether, and I trusted my gut to sense when the time was right to pull the trigger. I got it, man. I think most people would agree that trophy value is self-determined.
Nice.
Well, we did it, man. But respect is universal. We got a great meat bull. They always taste better. This is exactly the bull I wanted. It's cool. Nice.
Yeah, it is. It's a culmination of a great trip. Okay, we had rain on the last day. It was yesterday. It poured down last night, and the hail. And we just kept pushing further and further away from the river, and we're 2 miles away according to GPS. That's how far it took us to find these animals. And now the fun part starts.
Couldn't ask for better.
Where is that outfitter?
We're those Sherpas.
That's right.
Good
Where
job.
is that Argo?
So as an offering of respect and gratitude, I sacrificed the headgear for the land and spirits to reclaim. A simple gesture? Maybe, but it felt right. And that's what it's all about.
On this caribou, he came in from the field. The hunter went on ahead and caped him out for a game head or shoulder mount. A lot of caribou sweep way back, and they will not fit on the wall if the form doesn't stick out far enough. So most of the guys that design the various forms, they make them extra long so that the antlers aren't touching the wall. And so you have to leave plenty of cape. A lot of guys are used to making their cuts just right behind that leg, and oftentimes on a caribou that's not enough. Make sure you go back to the midsection of the belly, make a ring all the way around the animal at the center of the belly, and then just below the elbows you can make another ring cut there, and then you can connect the center of the belly line with the one up to the elbow and take off everything forward of that, and that'll make sure you got plenty of cape. When a hunter doesn't take the time to learn proper field care procedures, they're taking a big risk with their animal in terms of the things that can go wrong and their ability to even have it mounted. I have had things brought into my shop, thankfully it's rare, but where things were so poorly taken care of that I had to actually hand the cape back to the hunter and say, sorry, it's unmountable. The thing is if you don't take care of it, keep it cool or dry it and get it salted properly, and you have hot weather or wet conditions, both of which promote the growth of bacteria and speed up the decomposition of your hide. If you don't take measures to counteract that, your hide can go bad and it's unmountable. It's helpful to have a nose to front eye measurement if you can get one. And all you're doing is measuring from the center of the nose pad, and it doesn't matter whether it's a sheep or moose or caribou or what have you, and you want to get a measurement and write it down. And this one's 11 3/8. What that does is when I'm ordering the forms, it makes it real precise. But if you can get that measurement ahead of time, it just helps out a little bit. A couple of words of advice. If you've never done this before, don't get in a hurry. Take your time, get comfortable, relax, grab a cup of coffee or whatever it takes, because it's going to take you a long time to do it. You have to be patient. When you're out there, it even takes a taxidermist quite a bit of time to prepare, for example, a bear hide. I usually spend at least 4 to 8 hours on every bear that comes in before I even put the salt on it. Okay, and I handle a lot of bears, but for the guy who's just doing it for the first time, it's going to take quite a bit longer than that. So if you resign yourself to the fact that, hey, this is going to take some time, you don't get in a hurry, you take rest breaks, you're patient, you're going to end up with a much better product. You know, if a guy hasn't done it before, I'd plan on spending the majority of the day caping your caribou, turning the lips, turning the ears, prepping all the detail areas before you salt it. Again, it's going to take the majority of a day. I recommend that if you have room in your pack or your equipment, to take a scalpel in. Now, in my shop, I use a metal scalpel, but you can get the disposable scalpels with the plastic handles. And even on a sheep hunt where weight is a concern, I take a scalpel with the plastic handle because it makes the job so much easier when you want to take it off the skull. The other thing I use, and especially when I'm doing my flesh work and turning the lips and so forth, is I use single-edged razor blades. And I carry a pack of 5 of these, and 5 will do a lot of animals. I mean, you can do bears. I can do a whole bear with 2 razor blades normally, and a caribou I can do the whole cape, usually with 1 razor blade. But they just make everything nice because all the flesh comes off of there real easily. You don't have to stop and sharpen them like you do a knife.
Nice. All good. This is thick stuff, and the bugs are horrible. Just gotta grin and bear it and meditate. Screw that, let's get out of here. At this point in our hunt, all the glory had dissolved to become hard work back in camp.
Mark and I selected the coolest spot to serve as a meat cache, and we provided ground clearance for adequate ventilation. Time was once again a critical factor of my field duties. The last step before heading to bed was to provide overhead shelter to keep the game bags dry. Good thing we did too, because the weather conditions changed rapidly.
First thing we need to do is get the hide itself off the skull. And there's a lot of different ways to do that. There is no certain one way to do it. Everybody's got their preferences. And if you understand what I do with this caribou, you can apply the same thing I show you here to a sheep, moose, elk, deer, it doesn't matter. The same principles apply to all animals. A lot of taxidermists, they come from the back here and they work their way towards the front. I'm a little bit different. I like to start at the front, grab the lips and usually the nostrils. Once I get those, then I work my way up. One of the things you need to do is get plenty of lip material. And instead of coming from the back, coming from the front here, you can make sure that you get it right from the start. So again, with this scalpel, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up on this front face here, and you got the lip coming down and touching the gum line here. There's cartilage right there and bone as part of the skull, and you want to take all that with you as part of that lip. And where it's hard there, I'm just going to come in and start scoring that. And I'm pulling up to create tension. And I'm following the inner lip all the way around. Now you want to be careful you don't come through here and cut hair. And I'm reaching way in on that corner, skinning up as we go. And you can see where if you were trying to do this with a knife, again, you could get it done. But a scalpel just cuts so nicely and cleanly. And when you get to the corner here, you're going to have to kind of reach in there because it goes way back. I'm pulling up, and I'm scoring the bone here. You can hear that bone. I'm just scoring that and pulling away and cutting as I go. So I got plenty of lip there. Now I'm going to work on the lower lip. And on most animals, the lower lip's a little bit tighter to the skull. But pull down, and right where it touches the teeth there, just pull that away. You have to feel the bone and pull it away from the bone. You're better off leaving some meat on here and fleshing that off later than to try to do it while it's on the skull, because you might end up cutting through your hide. So I got plenty of lip there, pulling away and cutting as I go. Okay, now we got the lower lip separated there, and you can see there's, from the edge of the lip, there's plenty of inner lip material all the way around here. We've got most of the top off, but we still have to get the rest of it. But in order to do that, you're going to have to cut through the cartilage of the nose. And in doing so, you need this inner nose skin. Caribou noses are unique in that they don't have a nose pad, like sheep, goats, and moose has a small one. They have hair instead. But you want to make sure you have all this inner nostril skin at least up to where the hair ends, and maybe a little bit further. I can trim off the excess if you give me a little bit extra. But you don't want to cut it real short here along the edge, or your mount's not going to look as good. Once you've freed that lip, you can pull this nose up, and you have the cartilage of the nostril coming down here. You can just cut right through that. And you can start to see the inner nostril area as I work. And as you work your way up here, keep in mind that you're going to come up to hide again. And as you do, you don't want to cut through it. So pull away. Just be sort of careful as you go. I got to cut this inner corner of lip. You can see the skin is right there. We come up through. Don't get in a hurry here. And do the same thing on the other side. And we've got, right there, we got all the nostril, all the inner nostril we need is freed up, ready to come off. I could see everything I was doing. I could score the lip right at the gum line all the way around, collect plenty of that, and I could get the nose and make sure I have plenty of inner nostril right from the get-go here. Now as I come from the back and work my way to the front, once I get here, I know I've got everything I need. So I'll go ahead and switch to the back.
Talk about your hunting blues. There's nothing like waking up to miserably wet conditions, coupled with meat care duties. The wind and rain pounded our spirits all day and night. So we had to face the reality that we were stuck in the field at least one more day.
When I do a shoulder mount, I have to sew obviously everything that was cut back together. So you want to continue your cut forward because you have to separate it around the antler burrs. I'm going to come up forward, and when I get to here, I'm just going to Y over. And you can pull the hair out of the way, and I'm going to Y over to this burr. I'll Y to the other side. And I'm kind of digging down into the skull as I do that. I like to keep my Ys back here, not up here, because it's on the back side of the mount. It just makes everything cleaner. You'll be working on one part and have to go back to another part because what you're trying to do is let the hide relax and give yourself enough pull to get around the antlers. So pull the hair up out of the way. And at this point, I like to keep it pretty clean. I'll skin as much of the meat off of here as I can as I work. Always think about where you are while you're doing this in terms of the animal's anatomy. I'm moving down towards the ear butt, and I don't want to cut through the ear skin. So what I'm going to have to do when I get here is actually cut right through the muscle. The ear canal itself goes down, and on all animals, it looks like it's going right into the head there, but it doesn't. It actually goes down and into the side of the skull. So you want to take that ear as close to the skull as possible. There's going to be some places here where it's a little harder to get to than others. And I'm pulling and scoring right next to that burr. But you're going to have to cut a little bit here, and then maybe cut a little bit around the antler again until you can get it in position to cut through. Okay, kind of have a look at the burr there, where the hair joined the antler, and cut a little bit more on the ear. I'm going to stay pretty close to the bone, at least for a while. And I'm actually cutting down to the bone right now. That hole is the ear canal, and again, it's right at the skull, so I'll make sure I got plenty. And you're going to have to cut through that. And if you haven't done this a time or two, a lot of times when you get to a place like that you have to cut through, you're thinking, oh no, I just put a big hole in my hide. If you pay attention to where you're at, you'll know you just cut through the ear butt. And definitely with caribou, you have some tricky spots, that's for sure. Here again, I'm at the ear canal, and I'm feeling from the outside right where it goes down to the bone, and then coming from this side to make sure I'm there before I cut through. And I am, so I'm going to have to cut right through the canal. Okay, I'm to a point now where I've come around there about as far as I can without repositioning the head quite a bit. I've come forward pretty far on both sides. I might try to get this one side a little bit more. When you start cutting this away here, the best way to do it, I find, is just to grab the meat itself, and just, again, the scalpel does a great job of this. It just relaxes and the hide just pulls away. And the bone is starting to come up a little bit towards the eye orbit. There's no more critical point on the skinning operation than the eye itself, because if you cut through that eyelid, it's really hard sometimes to repair. I mean, you'd be amazed at some of the things we have to repair, but the cleaner you can make this cut around here, the better off your mount's going to be. And we can see the very edge of the orbit. There's still skin attached right here, and keeping good tension on this. You want to pull that up as far as you can get it, not cutting down through the orbit, just go right up to the edge of it, just like I've done here. But I've gone to a point that I can't go any further this direction, maybe up here a little bit. There you go. Now I have to bring it down from the top. Okay. I've freed this one antler. And now I'm just going to continue working towards my eye. Now personally, I find it's easier to get the eyes off cleanly. I like to be able to pull from here and here, but if I don't free the other antler burr first, it makes it harder to get slack on the skins. We've got the hide around both antler burrs. Now let's get the most critical part, which is the eye itself. What we've done up to this point, we started off, we got all the lip we needed, we got all the inner nostril we needed, then from the back we came, started collecting the hide around the base of the burrs, and also grabbed all of our ears. There's only one critical area left, and it's the eyes. Again, what I consider to be the most important part of your mount is going to be around the eyes. If you look at the eye itself here, you got the eyelid, which is the visible part on your mount. but you've got this inner eyelid, this white part that you see here that goes into the eye orbit and actually connects right at the iris, which is the colored part of the eye. And on some animals, caribou are one example, they have a really deep tear duct. And you want to collect that too. It goes way down in there close to the skull. So just be careful as you go. Keep a lot of tension on the hide. And if you ever lose your place, flip it back over and see where you are. All right, I'm pulling up. Now I'm just lightly scoring the bone, and I'm going to go pretty much all the way around the outer edge of the eye orbit. And I'm pulling pretty hard here to keep good tension. Okay, I got around the back there. Try to come up from here and get a little more. What I like to do once I free the orbit itself, and I got some slack here, is I'll actually pinch that eyelid and pull on it and cut down into the eye orbit. I'm no longer cutting this way. I'm coming around the edge of the eye orbit, just like so, and pulling up on that inner eyelid skin. Work my way around the top of it. And as you do that, notice how it's starting to get darker down in here. And what we're looking at is the actual iris of the eye. Once you're down to the iris, pinch off the eyelid skin, grab it, cut down right through it. You can see the color right there. Okay, I've cut through that eyelid skin and you can see the iris. Now I'm going to grab that right neck, and I like to cut my eye skin right where it touches the iris. And as you pull up on that, it's pretty easy to do that because you can just follow that edge all the way around. Pull up on it. Okay. Let's see, I made a clean cut all the way around the iris. Now I still have all this like fatty tissue and soft tissue. Go ahead and collect that by cutting down in that orbit quite a ways. The skin on the front corner of the eye is always very thin and close to the bone. So once you get to the front, just as I'm going to do with this duck animal, I'm going to pull, and again, you can feel the hard bone there. I'm going to just pull and score that bone. That little hole that you see is not a hole that I put in it, and you're going to get nervous when you see that. What that is that's the actual gland for the tears. And even though bears don't have tear ducts, they have two little holes there too. Now, I got to follow my tear duct down, and I'm just scoring bone. I mean, it's that thin here. Pulling and scoring bone. May help at this point to roll her back up a little ways. Okay, the way this tear duct works is the bone actually comes out and then the tear duct goes way down in there. So keep that in mind as you're making your cut. If you're going to have to follow the contour of that bone, like I'm going in here like so, sort of scooping and cutting as I go, following the contour of the bone around. Just about there, and that eye is free. We got both eyes off, we got all the detail areas, now it's just a matter of getting the rest of the cape off. So I'm going to continue working my way down the nose. This part's all pretty easy, except for the fact that you got this nice brow palm running interference. That's okay. Just reposition it till you get an angle you can work with. And now all I have to do is get this little bottom part. Just about there. Okay. When you've done it right, you should be able to see your irises. You shouldn't see any nose skin in here or any lip skin attached to the skull itself. Okay, what you're looking for is you got all your ear all the way down to the bone where the ear canal touched the bone. No cuts there. Okay, you got it nice and pretty, plenty of structure underneath. You've got all your inner nostril skin because we came from the front and grabbed it. You've got that inner lip all the way from the corner there to that point where we cut it, on the top and on the bottom. And then on the eyelids, you got your tear ducts are intact. And then look at this eyelid skin. Look how much eyelid skin we have here. It's like a big tube, okay, that goes all the way from the eyelid down to where it joined the iris. Now, I don't need all that much to do a mount, but better to have too much and cut it off later than not have enough. Commonly, people cut through the eyelids, and it's just, again, real hard to repair. So that's what you're looking for. Now, once you get it off the skull like we've done here, that's only part of the story. Probably one of the most common mistakes I see on hide preparation in the field is that people get it to this point, they don't know how to turn the ears, turn the lips, split the nostril properly, and so what they do is they salt the heck out of their hide thinking everything's okay at that point, but in fact it's not. If you salt this hide at this point, the salt will not go up into the ear and you will lose your hair out of your ears. If you salt it like this around the lips, the salt, there's a good chance the salt will not penetrate into that lip skin and you'll lose a band of hair about 1 inch wide all the way around the front of the face. So you have to turn those lips to expose those hair follicles to the salt. Same thing, I'm going to turn these ears inside out all the way to the tip so that all these hair follicles are exposed to the salt. And I'll also trim up the eyes a little bit and the nostrils as well. So all of that actually takes longer in most cases than the caping process. So you're only partway done. This is a good point. If you're working all day on this thing, this is a good point where you're going to want to take a break.
Since we're now in the keeping it clean and cool phase of our field care, we're making sure that we're getting all those nasty hairs, dirt particles, and any other foreign matter that might help bacteria along. Any spare moments of improved weather were spent on meat care. Not to mention praying for the pilot to arrive to take us home. But I couldn't let gloomy weather interfere with the outcome of this game meet. We just worked too hard for it. If I've learned anything at all about field care, it's that the end result equals the efforts applied by the hunter. So it goes without question that quality is a state of mind from the start.
The other thing that we're going to have to do to this cape before we salt it is flesh it out real good. Get as much of the fat and as much of the chunks of flesh off of here as possible. Reason being is, once again, the salt may not penetrate this meat and lock the hair follicles in place. So you want to get it as close to the hide as possible. You can get away with making a few field nicks, or maybe going off kilter a little bit on your cuts. Those things aren't super critical, but usually if the taxidermist has to sew a bunch of holes because you nicked it here and you nicked it there, he's usually going to charge you for his time. I got a sheep in a couple of years ago that the individual that dropped it off, he had put 27 holes in that cape, and I spent an entire 12 hours sewing that cape up the day before I mounted it. 12 hours. So most of us charge a flat rate. If anything, if you don't take care of your hide properly, it's probably going to cost you an extra fees by the taxidermist. So there is a certain monetary incentive for you to do it right, but more importantly, you want that mount to look good. So the better you take care of it, the better it's going to look at the other end. I like to start up on the face, and in doing so, at that point, I put my scalpel away. I like to use the scalpel to cape it, but then I switch to the single edge razor blade. You have to be careful what you're doing. You don't want to cut through the cape, those are so sharp. But you'll find that it actually does the cutting where you want it to cut, when you want it to cut, without all the effort. The other thing I like to use is a pair of, I call them fleshing scissors, but any kind of good like electrician scissors will work. I use electrician scissors inside my shop quite a bit, but you can get a lot of the chunks of flesh off with these. Okay, we'll go ahead and start with the ears, and I'm going to show you how to turn an ear. What we're trying to do here is turn this ear completely inside out, thus exposing the hair to the salt that we're going to put on it later. You're going to need something to stick up into the ear while you're turning it. These are called ear splitters, but I use it primarily as a probe while I'm turning the ear. You don't need anything like this. I just use it because it's handy. But in the field before, I've taken a piece of wood, just a stick, and I've carved a rounded end on that so I can stick it up in here. So let's get started on this. What I'm going to do is just pull it up. We've got our ear canal, and you can see the ear butt here joined to the skin. What you want to do is, I like to put one hand underneath and use my thumb as a pull, and now my fingers underneath act like a fleshing beam so I can feel what I'm doing. But I'm just going to take that razor blade and start pulling with my thumb and cutting or separating the hide from the meat. And once you get started with this, work your way around, it gets sort of easier as you go, until you get up into the very end of the ear. Then it gets a little touchy. And you can see how clean I'm doing this. I like to leave no flesh on here. Make it just as clean as I can. You got a piece of cartilage. I can actually see it moving around under there. You can go between that cartilage and the skin just by sort of paralleling the cartilage underneath it. See what it's doing as you go. Basically what you're going to be doing is skinning across the back side of the ear. So you're going to work from that edge around to the other edge. So you got to sort of find your edge from the underneath side, and we can see it comes right down into here. So I'll pull up on that, separate it. You want to pull up on that skin. You see that white membrane there? You got ear skin, white membrane, and muscle. Pull up on that, and what you're doing is you're cutting that white membrane. I can't go any further that way because I'm at the very edge of the ear. And if you cut into the cartilage a little bit, like those little lines there, it does not matter. Before I mount the animal, I have to remove the cartilage anyway. Expose more of that white membrane. So once you get it freed a little bit, pull up on it. You got ear skin, white membrane, and muscle. Pull up on that, and what you're doing is you're cutting that white membrane. I like to go all the way to the edge of the ear, and I'm there on this side, and I'm there on this side too. I can't really go any further, maybe a little bit right in there. But you don't want to cut through the ear. So And as I skin up in here further, notice that I'm running out of muscle and I'm just running into cartilage, the actual cartilage that's in the ear. When I get to that point, and I see that there's no more real muscle up there, what I like to do is clean the earbud out. So what I'll do is I'll just pinch up on the muscle, follow that around, and skin it off the cartilage. This is where I like to put a probe up into the ear, and like I said, I'm going to use this ear tool just because it's handy. A stick or whatever, as long as it's not sharp, as long as you got a rounded corner, will work. If you can't get your stick up in there because the ear canal is so small, it's okay to make a little slit in that. That just spreads it. That just spreads it out a little more. And now you can get this tool up in there. And once you have that up in there, it makes it real easy to follow your cartilage line around. And I'm not pulling down on this hard, but I am putting pressure on it, just enough that I can see my line. If when I put pressure here I see any white there, then I'm not to the edge of the ear yet. And this is a constant repositioning deal. I just keep working my way around. I can't go any further that way because I'm at the very edge of the ear. And if you cut into the cartilage a little bit, like those little lines there, it does not matter. Before I mount the animal, I have to remove the cartilage anyway. Expose more of that white membrane. So once you get it freed a little bit, pull up on it. You got ear skin, white membrane, and muscle. Pull up on that, and what you're doing is you're cutting that white membrane. I like to go all the way to the edge of the ear, and I'm there on this side, and I'm there on this side too. I can't really go any further, maybe a little bit right in there. But you don't want to cut through the ear. So. And as I skin up in here further, notice that I'm running out of muscle and I'm just running into cartilage, the actual cartilage that's in the ear. When I get to that point, and I see that there's no more real muscle up there, what I like to do is clean the earbud out. So what I'll do is I'll just pinch up on the muscle, follow that around, and skin it off the cartilage. This is where I like to put a probe up into the ear, and like I said, I'm going to use this ear tool just because it's handy. A stick or whatever, as long as it's not sharp, as long as you got a rounded corner, will work. If you can't get your stick up in there because the ear canal is so small, it's okay to make a little slit in that. That just spreads it. That just spreads it out a little more. And now you can get this tool up in there. And once you have that up in there, it makes it real easy to follow your cartilage line around. And I'm not pulling down on this hard, but I am putting pressure on it, just enough that I can see my line. If when I put pressure here I see any white there, then I'm not to the edge of the ear yet. And this is a constant repositioning deal. I just keep working my way around back and forth. As you work your way up the ear, the skin obviously becomes thinner and thinner, and you have to be very careful. And it's really not that hard. If you just put pressure on it, you can see the line where the cartilage meets the skin, and you just want to take it along that line. Or maybe I should say the way you know you're not done is you look at one ear. Okay, it's nice and round out to the edges, but you can see there's no tip there, and you know by looking at your other ear that it should come to a point. So it gives an indication how much further you have to go. Now you know you're side to side pretty good in here, but you want to make sure you get all the way to the tip. So just look at your other ear and that will tell you how much more you got to do. But I like to take it all the way to the edge. If you're not comfortable with that, again, if you get it to within 1/8 to 1/4, you'll still be okay. If you're doing it right, it should be a nice rounded surface. You shouldn't have any like indentation. So any place it's not just right, like I can see right along this edge here, I can go a little bit further. This is not the type of thing, by the way, to do with the beer. Thinking that it's going to relax you more, you're probably going to cut into it. You can have a beer, do it after you're done. Okay, this ear is completely turned now. I could go maybe another 1/8 of an inch up in here, but I'll do that after it comes back from the tannery. There's no point in doing that. I'm as far as I need to get, and you can see the shape here matches the shape of the other ear. If it's real thin in here or across here and this one's real wide, then you're not far enough to the edge yet. Also, as you look at this, I'm just cleaning it up here a little bit. Notice how it forms a nice smooth edge all the way up. It's not all jagged. If there's any thick, fleshy areas around the eye, I'll trim those down a little bit, and I'll even turn the eyelid down a little bit by putting my finger in there and gently, ever so gently, working my way around that edge just a little bit. And the only reason I'm doing that is I like to make sure that I'm exposing those hair follicles to the salt. And I can feel, with my finger underneath here, I can feel like it's really sort of thick in here, so that's where I'm going to take it down a little bit. You don't have to get too crazy about this part, just take it down a little bit. The tear ducts, you got to be careful here because it's kind of a funny skin, but you can take your razor blade and just peel some of that flesh off of there. Just to clean it up a bit. And again, you can see how I'm just cleaning up around there. Now the beauty of scissors, learn how to use them, and you got the luxury of being able to afford the weight or the room to carry them. Put your finger right up in there and just trim that right off. It's great. So we do both eyes that way, and then we work our way down towards the front. I normally like to go ahead and do the lips. When you're turning the lips, the whole idea here is you got the outer skin, the lip folds over and onto the inner side of the skin. You have to separate that, fold it out, fillet it out, so that the hair follicles that are under here are exposed to salt. So what we do, I usually like to start at one corner here. I really only need about 3/4 of an inch here, and I've got plenty more than that. But what I'm going to do, instead of grabbing this whole big piece here, is I'm just going to cut down with my blade gently, because I got my fingers under here and I don't want to carve through the hide, but I'm going to carve straight down into that until I get to the hide, and it's red meat until you hit hide. This lip was attached like so, and we're just opening it up just like a book. You want to be able to lay this out so that it's flat. It was attached there. I just cut right down to the hide just to get it started. Now I'm going to work my way around the lip, all the way around, and this will take you, if you haven't done it before, it might take you about an hour and a half to do a lip. And some of this is by feel, because underneath where my fingers are, I can feel where it's thick, and I can feel the ridge line formed by the bitter edge of the lip. But you don't want to cut so far into the other side that you're cutting through the hide. And usually when you get to those connective pieces. The hide is just on the other side, so just be careful. And you should be able to look at the edge there, pinch it, and feel that you're all the way to that edge, which I am. If you go too far, you're going to cut right through it. And if you don't go far enough, the salt may not get in there. So I constantly, when I'm working on an animal, I come back and look at the hair side, make sure I'm there. I find that on a caribou, when you're skinning the front and turning the front part of the lip, right below the nostril, you have to be pretty cautious because it's sometimes hard to feel the skin side. I mean, it comes up on you pretty quick, so as you work your way around the front part, slow down a little bit. You can see right there, I don't have to punch through very far, and I'm hitting nostril skin on the other side. So instead of going down, as I get to that point, I angle my blade a little bit more this way. One thing on a caribou is and this is important to know when you're having one mounted, is they do show about 3/4 of an inch of upper lip skin when their mouth is closed. So you don't want to cut through that lip at all. And you can see the difference in the texture here, fairly smooth, and then you get all this connective tissue. So with your finger underneath, you can parallel that without cutting through it, but it's all part of turning the lips. You're not going to have this same anatomy on a sheep or a goat. Again, the caribou is rather unique. As you're working, occasionally stop, flip it over, and make sure you are where you think you are. Make sure you've gone far enough. I can feel, this is flat now, all the way around. I've gone all the way to the edge of the lip here. And all these hair follicles right here that would not have been exposed to salt had I not turned the lips are now right here. The salt's going to contact that. It's going to lock those hairs in place. And that's what you're trying to do. You're mainly trying to get these big fleshy pieces off of there. Got a lot here right on the front part of the lip. Okay, I've done the upper lip. It's turned all the way out. It's nice and flat there. I've trimmed up a lot of the flesh off of it. Now I'm going to keep working my way around. We got to do the same thing to this lower lip. You're coming down through there, but you're actually angling. You start angling and rolling the blade down somewhat without cutting through the skin. You just have to really take your time and feel your way down there. I mean, like right here, you see we're leaving red flesh, so we need to angle down a little more. And right there, the hair follicles come really close to the lip skin. Sort of rolling it around a little bit. But I can tell you, we're at the edge. Again, I can feel that. You can sort of see that dark line, but we're all the way to the edge, right there. So what I'll do is I'll come around to the other side of the lower lip and do the same thing, working towards the front, because if I do that from both sides, it makes it easier to open up. I've done a job in terms of making sure salt penetrates all the hair because I've already flipped it back. Right in the lower lip chin area, you have a really big, thick chunk of flesh. And if you dump salt on this, there's a good chance it's not going to penetrate to the other side and lock the hair in. So you need to take this thick, fleshy pad off. And again, it's on all mammals. The easiest way I find to do that is to put my fingers up underneath and take my blade and just work my way right down. You don't want to go too far, but you want to work down almost to the hide. And then once you do that, just flesh it off of there. Well, you look at this side compared to that side, my salt's going to get down in there, and you can feel it. It's thin enough that the salt will get down in there real good now. Okay, if you think about everything we've done to this point, with the ear, we're exposing the hair follicles. With the eye, the one that we've trimmed, we're going to do the other one yet to go. We're exposing the hair follicles there. And we've also done the same thing with the lip by turning it out to the edge. Well, we've also got to do the same thing to the nose, because between this cartilage, where my finger is, all the way to the front of the nose, if we salt it at this point, then the salt's not going to penetrate up there, and we're going to lose the hair off the nose.
Well, this is part of the float hunting experience, is taking care of your meat, making sure that we're getting all those nasty hairs, dirt particles, and any other foreign matter that might help bacteria along. The cleaner, the better. Just remember that how you take care of your meat is a direct reflection of how it's going to taste when it gets back home. And I guess I just try to imagine it looks like shit out here, it's going to taste like shit back home. So clean it. Obviously this is a chore that we have to revisit daily. So what we have to do, especially on impact shots, is we have to debride those so that the bacteria doesn't set in and start to infect the entire roast area. I don't like any of this to stay with the leg as it begins the aging phase, because bloods and tissue and any other dead, blasted, blown out mess is going to create a skank of a bacteria field, and we can't have that. So debreeding is just cutting away the dead, nasty tissue until it starts to appear a little more edible. Because if it looks edible out here, it's likely it'll be edible back home if we do our part. Hello? Is there any bacteria in there?
What we're going to do is, it's called splitting the nostril wings and turning the nose to the edge. To some extent, it's hard to tell where you are on this nostril skin, and because it's all fleshy and meaty there, you have to be very careful around this nose skin on the caribou, because it is thin right until it joins the skin itself, so it's very easy to cut through if you're not paying attention. You may want to stick your fingers up through the nostrils, but you have to work this cartilage all the way out. And I'm already coming up on this one edge right here, so don't get too overzealous. This is called splitting the nostril wings, and you'll see how this works once I open this up. Sometimes a knife works well for this stage because its cutting edge is long and straight, but if you get off to one side or the other, there's no need to sweat it. I just switched tools here because my razor blade is a little sharper than the scalpel. Now I've got one nostril wing here and one nostril wing there. And once I get all the way through this, just like I'm doing right now, and again, you got nose skin right on the other side, so be careful, you don't want to cut through. But once I get down to here, you'll see how it causes the nostril wings to relax. Now we've got two separate nostril wings. And To tell if you've done it right, you just turn the nostril wing right side out, like so. And it should be flat all the way around here. I'm going to flesh. See, it's a little bit thick right in there, so I'll turn it, I'll re-invert it and flesh a little bit of that again. But you can see that inner nose skin comes completely out now. And I'm feeling it underneath there. You can feel the ridge with my finger up underneath. But I'm just going to continue doing that all the way around. And I'll do that to both nostrils. Once you've detailed the face completely, you've got the ears turned, lips turned, eyes split and fleshed out, and the nostril wings split, then you still need to go ahead, before you salt the hide, you still need to go ahead and get the chunks of flesh off the body.
So what we're trying to do is test the temperatures just to basically help us decide whether to keep it open to air or to submerge it, just to lower the core temperatures. So keeping that our target temperature is around 50 degrees, 55 degrees at most, we're going to see what ours is after 24 hours. Alright, it's registering 74 now. Right in the center. Our objectives for this trip were simple. We wanted to access and explore virgin terrain in western Alaska for bear, boo, and bow. And it turned out to be a pretty badass trip.
The fleshing stage can take an hour or more, depending on how meticulous you were during the skinning process. Something else I like to do on a big flab like this, it just gets so long, it's hard to work with. So I'll actually come down, I'll go right into the hide. You can see it's real easy to do without going through if you just take your time there, and it goes right down to the hide. I get that corner started, maybe I'll do the same thing right over here. Basically what you're doing is you're trying to do this in reasonable sized portions. In some areas of the animal it's going to be fatty, like this right here, there's a big glob of fat. Nothing different here, just pull up on that, get a line started, pull back, and trim that off. This is where the arrow went through on this bull when it was killed. If you have any bloodshot areas, trim that off, because that has a tendency to form bacteria pretty quick, and it's the bacteria that forms on the hide that destroys the proteins and causes the hair to split. So I'm going to continue doing this to this entire cape until it's all nice and white, basically, like what you see right in here. But before we salt this hide, we want the entire cape clean, just like this one.
Impromptu quiz. 2 things you did right on this trip.
I cooked. Did that right. Yeah, we caught a ptarmigan. Look here, we roasted it. What we did is we did an old Indian technique where we took wood and some rocks and baked it on the shore right here. It's a beautiful ptarmigan. You can see it's well fed. It's been eating all summer long. Tasty too. It doesn't get any better than that. Willow ptarmigan.
All right, that's true. Second.
I brought enough batteries for your machine.
Yes, you did. 2 things you did wrong.
I'd bring my bath towel. I didn't bring a towel to dry off with. I used my shirt. Forgot that.
Number 2.
I won't bring this again. It deflates too easily. Oh, dog, that ain't right. That did.
2 things I did right on this trip. 1, I taped my fingers to prevent cracks and cuts and bruises and aches and pains from ailing me all day. 2nd, I brought river shoes, dog. When everything else is wet, you keep these dry for camp, man, you're good to go.
Two things I did wrong. Number one, I ran out of chapstick about 4 days ago. Things are rough. You see the cracks? That ain't cool, dude. Chap lips are painful, it sucks. Second thing I did wrong, I didn't bring a life jacket for those hairy rapids. Not very smart of me. Well, there used to be a $3,000 camera attached to the top of this piece of metal, but those rapids right there just humbled us a little bit. Went over nose first, buried the hole, couldn't high side fast enough, and ended up taking a little bit of swim. And the only thing we could think about was trying to save that. And I don't think there's any hope for salvaging anything but our pride.
I don't even know if we can salvage that.
First swim I've taken in one of these boats. Didn't feel that good, I'll be honest with you. Wear your life jacket, dude. Wear your life jacket.
If you look at the hide real close, you can see now that all my flesh work is done, there are no thick pieces of meat or fat anywhere on this hide. So we know that the salt is going to penetrate all areas and lock that hair in. We look again at our ears, and you can see that they're turned all the way to the tips and all the way to the edges, and they're smooth around both edges. Okay, again, the salt's going to get into those hair follicles and lock that in place. We've gotten all the flesh off of the lower jaw here on our lips. Those are turned flat all the way around. Here's the edge of the lip. It goes all the way around. We've got the nostrils turned all the way to their edges, so they're nice and flat. And then we fleshed all around the eyes and the face. And once again, there's no thick red flesh or fat anywhere on this face. Okay. So with that done, again, that's just before you salt it, it's always a good idea just to check everything over one time like I just did and make sure there's nothing left that's going to cause you a problem and cause hair slippage. Now I'm going to lay it out on a flat surface, and here I got a piece of cardboard, but a visqueen tarp or any kind of a surface you can lay it down on where you can catch any salt that you knock off of here will help. And that also helps you keep your hide out of the dirt, because you don't want to get dirt on the hide if you can avoid it. And the whole purpose again of the salt is to pull the moisture out of the hide and to promote rapid drying, which prevents the proteins in the hide from deteriorating, thus causing the hair to slip. Notice how as soon as I throw it down here, the edge wants to roll in. And it's a common mistake when people salt hides that they'll put it in here, but they won't get all the way to that edge. And what'll happen is it'll roll over on itself, and you'll lose effectively 2 inches of hide because it'll rot on you if you don't get the salt to it. So when I lay my hides out, I go right to each edge and I actually pull it out. If I pull like this, it's just going to pull this edge back over again. So lay it as flat as you possibly can, and surprisingly, once you get the salt on it, it won't roll back in on itself nearly as much. But you want to use a fine grain salt just like I'm using here, because what it does is it gets right into those pores real good. I think it just absorbs a lot better. What you're looking for is a non-iodized salt, because sometimes iodine and salt can discolor the hide somewhat. And I just buy salt in 25-pound bags, and it says right on the bag, it says table salt. It doesn't say non-iodized, and the reason for that is they don't have to. If it has iodine in it, however, it does have to say iodized salt on it. If you have any folds or wrinkles, spread those out so that you make sure you work the salt into all areas. And what you're looking for is a nice layer all over the entire body at this point. You need a little more in certain areas because it's thin. Go ahead and add a little more. You've gone to a lot of trouble up to this point You don't want to skimp on the salt if you don't need to. As long as you got plenty of it, use it. When I do a backpack hunt for sheep, I usually pack in 5 pounds, 5 to 6 pounds for a cape. On my bear hunts, like if I'm doing a coastal brown bear hunt, 2 of us are going, we'll normally take 50 pounds. We'll get 2 bears, that's kind of on the light end, but it'll get us by. Moose is going to take probably around 50 pounds, maybe a little less than that. And I could probably do 2 caribou capes easily with a 25-pound bag. Now when I get to the face, few people would argue that this is the most critical part of a mount. So you want to make sure that you get your salt into all the detail areas. The hard part about the face is it doesn't lay out flat like the rest of the body does, so you really have to sort of work it in here. Usually what I do is I just, with the head out, I just dump quite a bit of salt on it, making a pile. Just massage that salt right into the ear. And it's not going to stick real well because usually the ears dry so fast after you turn them, it's not going to stick a lot to it, but work it in so that it's at least making contact with those wet spots. And then on the outer edge, you want to, don't forget the outer edge on the outside of the ear. Make sure you pull salt on the hide ear because a lot of times it'll fold over on itself. So pull that out, work it in around the base of the ear. And what I've done is I'll take a 1 liter bottle of Pepsi. You know, once the Pepsi's all out of it, rinse that out real good, dry it out real good, and then I'll just pack it full of non-iodized salt. I'll pour the salt in there, and when you first do that, you're only going to end up with about 3 pounds of salt. But if you put the cap back on the bottle and just start pounding it against your fist, keep doing that, you'll notice that salt is going to compress and settle down. So I'll add more salt and I'll pound it again, and I'll keep doing this probably 6, 7, 8 times. You can keep adding more salt, and then when you finally put that cap on, I mean that bottle is dense like a brick, but you got 4 pounds of salt that's dry. You don't have to worry about it going bad. Once you use your salt, you now have a water container or a container for someone to use while you're out there. So I found it works really well for my backpack hunts. The lip is going to want to fold over on itself too, so flap it out real good. And then I like to force the salt right into the lower chin area. Just work it into the lips. Again, check your lip around the corners. I'm over at the corner there and over at the corner here. Once you have that done real nicely, I usually take a little extra salt and I dump it right on the neck, and I spread it out because I'm going to fold the face onto itself, and that way it's laying in a pool of salt. And when I do that, I pull it over sort of quick, like so, and I mash it down right into that pool of salt that I just laid there. Then I re-expose my edges up here, pull this head flap down. You can see the advantage now of having a tarp to lay your animal down as your salt, because you're not dumping it all onto the ground. Remember, we have those big tubes of the eye. Pull those up a little bit, work the salt in all the way around. All right, just work it in with your fingers. Right around the tear duct, same thing. Because if I don't pull this eye up, see that big area down there that didn't get any salt? You've got to fully expose those areas. Work it in there back and forth. Just take your time. Okay, when you get down to the nostrils, okay, down here at the nostrils, I'm pulling the flaps up again and working the salt in all the way around each nostril. Go ahead and flap those out and start forcing salt in all the way around the edges. Work it in there just like we've done everywhere else. But again, the key here is you're pulling up on the nostril. You're making sure it gets in all the way around. And when I folded this face back over onto the body, don't forget the upper lip. Okay, see there? It folded right down onto the hide. You have to go ahead and make sure that the salt gets into that as well. Now I'm just going to massage it in just a little bit more. See that flap? Check that again. You know, there's no set technique here, but I like to fold it in such a way that the salt stays on the hide and in the hide, and that I'm not dumping it all off to the ground, because that sort of defeats the purpose of everything we've done here. And again, by leaving the hide laid out before we roll it, the salt wants to stick to the hide much better. So I'll just take it, push it down into the salt. If you have any extra salt around the edges, go ahead and collect that up and just throw it in. And I like to go skin to skin as much as possible, because you're basically what you're doing there is you're putting salt on salt. Is once I get salt on the hide, I like to leave it laid out as flat as possible for about an hour. Once it's soaked in for about that time, you can go ahead and fold it up for transport. It makes sure that the salt's getting into all areas. And now at this point, you need to let your hide breathe. And it's imperative that hunters store their capes and hides inside high-quality, breathable game bags for maximum protection against field elements and insects. Once you've salted this hide, you're not done with it. There's other things you need to go ahead and do to prepare the hide and to fully preserve it. Ultimately, we want it nice and hard dry like this, because once it's in this state, we can leave a hide like this for years before we send it to the tannery, and it's still going to tan up just fine. The best thing you can do, if you don't have enough salt to take care of your hide before it gets to the taxidermist, is keep it as cool as you possibly can. I know a hunter one time that shot a huge coastal bear on the Alaska Peninsula, and it was on the second of a 9-day hunt in the spring. They had no salt with them. Don't ask me why, but they didn't have any salt. But what he and his friend did, and they both got bears, they ended up just rolling the hides up, putting them in game bags, and then burying them in little drifts of snow during the day. Now I should caution you that sometimes the ravens and the magpies will come in and start pecking at that, or even some of the ground critters, so you want to pay attention. You don't want to leave it out there all day without watching it from time to time. And then at night, what they would do is they'd pull it out of the snow, they'd open it up because now the air is nice and cool, and let that air circulate around it. And each day they'd roll it back up and put it in the snow, and it's like a giant refrigerator. They did, I think, 7 more days before they got their hides into the taxidermist, and they were just fine. But they had the snow to work with, they kept it nice and cool, and they paid attention to it. Do not put your critters in a plastic bag. If you put your critters in non-porous materials after you shoot them, there's a good chance they're going to rot. The bacteria is going to break down the hide, it's going to smell bad when we get it, and you're going to lose hair, you're going to lose your hide, and it's no good. After about, again, 24 minimum, about 48 hours or so, I'm going to go ahead and dump all the salt out of that hide, and I'm going to start hanging it up and letting it dry. When you store your hide at night in camp, if it's in a game bag, don't set it on a hard surface. Normally I like to maybe lay it with the hair side down, prop up a couple of sticks. And again, the idea here is we're trying to keep air circulation all around the hide. That's why it's in the cloth bag. That's why we're going to prop it up like that, so that the air is getting to the skin side. And again, that's after we've shaken all the salt off of it. You don't want to do it if it's raining. If it's raining, just leave it rolled up like this, but in the shade. And there's enough breeze that it's going to cool and dry the hide. And then just keep checking it, open it up, let it get some air. Just keep hanging it until you get it to the point where it's nice and white, nice and dry like that. And that's going to take, that might take 7 to 10 days before it's really fully dried, depending on the weather. But if you keep doing all those things we talked about, you've salted it, you open it up and air it out every now and then, it's going to be just fine until you get it to the taxidermist, and you're going to have a really good hide to work with, or he is, to make sure that you have a real nice mount. And most hunters wants something to commemorate that really special experience. And that's where we taxidermists come in. We provide our artistic skills in the form of a distinctive mount that provides you something to remind you of that very special moment of field. Long after the meat is gone, that's going to remind you of that special moment. So quite a bit of work goes into it, but the more work you put into it, the better the end results coming back to you.
Mark has got a fish hook embedded in his knuckle. And he's hitting the cut skin around it. Good gosh. That ain't right. Had to do it to yourself. Wow. Luckily he's a surgeon, but that ain't right.
Good times. That's it for now.